waiting for you.
House of Dragon's entire family tree explored in detail. When Game of Thrones was first released, its pilot episode turned out to be a twister for several future fans who had not read the books. The show later became a dragon-sized hit and bereft the last season, and it will be loved by one and many until their last. The problem essentially arose because of the complex family trees, the sheer number of characters, and the politics between each house. Now that the first episode of House of the Dragon is here, we thought it was time to explain the family tree of the House Targaryen, their internal politics and external forces that seek to destroy House Targaryen. But we have to remember that the only thing that could tear down the House of the Dragon was itself. While it may seem like a simple sentence, it has many layers, and in this video, we will uncover all these layers so that the rest of the HBO show becomes easier to understand. Oh, and by the way, beware of spoilers. So, let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a whole lot. So thank you, and let's begin.
14 succession claims were heard, but only 2 were truly considered.
History of the House Targaryen before King Viserys. Before we dive into what's happening in the show itself, exploring the history of the Seven Kingdoms is indispensable. For the sake of convenience, George R.R. Martin's Worlds timeline is divided according to the year of Aegon's conquest of Westeros. So AC would mean after the conquest, and BC would mean before the conquest. So several hundred years ago, a warrior and battle commander named Aegon Targaryen I came with his dragon called Balerion the Dread, and his 2 sister queens, Visenya and Rhaenys, and their dragons, Vhagar and Meraxes. These 3 siblings and their dragons managed to take over Westeros and unite the 6 kingdoms into one. And the last kingdom of Dorne came into the fold a little while later. Aegon ruled his country for almost 4 decades when his firstborn son Aenys took over the throne in the year 37 AC. However, Aenys was not a very strong ruler, although he was humble and just. He ruled the kingdoms for only 5 years until he died in 42 AC due to natural reasons. After Aenys' death, his son Aegon Targaryen, the second of the name, was to rule the country. However, Aenys' half-brother, Maegor, took the throne and was crowned as king. However, Maegor was a terrible ruler who was dubbed Maegor the Cruel by his subjects, and no ruler whose subjects are unhappy manages to rule for very long. A rebellion started in his kingdom, but his cruel methods ensured that most of his bannermen and allies had escaped. In the end, he was found dead on the Iron Throne with his wrists slashed and his neck impaled by one of the swords on the Iron Throne. After Maegor's most mysterious death, which some say was the work of the throne itself, Jaehaerys Targaryen, the second son and 4th child of Aenys, took the throne for himself in the year 48 AC. Jaehaerys was hailed by many as a wise king, and the House Targaryen saw its pinnacle during Jaehaerys' long rule of 5.5 decades until the year 103 AC. Now, the first episode of House of the Dragon begins with Jaehaerys summoning a great council to choose their next heir. As it happened, he had lost both his sons and was now in need of a new heir. Of all the people who claimed to become the Prince of Dragonstone, only 2 claims were heard. These came from Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, Jaehaerys' oldest daughter, and from Viserys Targaryen, Jaehaerys' grandson. As was customary, no one wanted a woman to sit upon the Iron Throne, and Viserys was chosen as the new heir in the year 101 AC. Viserys became a king in 103 AC after the old king Jaehaerys died in his bed, and Viserys found himself a prosperous kingdom, a happy subject, and no one to claim the throne but himself.
I have decided to name a new heir.
I'm your heir.
Not
Viserys' tryst with heirs. House Targaryen had doomed itself because of their quest to keep the bloodline pure. Much like the ancient Egyptian kingdoms, the Targaryens wed amongst each other. The several incestuous children were often found to be suffering from sickness or were stillborn. For instance, King Aenys' parents were siblings, Aegon and Rhaenys, according to Grandmaster Gawain. Although the king died at the age of 35, he looked like a man of 60. Nevertheless, the new King Viserys was without a son, having fathered one daughter named Rhaenyra with the first Queen Aemma. Now it is important to note that Queen Aemma was the daughter of Rhodrik Aeron of Vale and Daela Targaryen, the old king's daughter. Naturally, Viserys' queen was also his first cousin, and the fruits from such a branch would not be quite healthy, now would they? Viserys and Aemma tried several times to bear a son, but in the 10 years of their marriage, they had to suffer 2 stillbirths, 2 miscarriages, and 1 child died in the cradle. That's 5 dead children in twice as many years. Only Rhaenyra survived. But in the year 112 AC, the 9th year of Viserys' rule, Aemma was pregnant for the 7th time, and this time the king was certain of having a boy. But all this didn't mean that Viserys did not have an heir at present. He did, and it was his brother Daemon Targaryen. But the man was no less than just a demon. Not only was he a vile and cruel man, but he was overambitious for the Iron Throne. Daemon was the grandson of Jaehaerys Targaryen, King Viserys' younger brother, and the prospective successor of the Iron Throne. Sir Otto Hightower, the king's hand, believed Daemon was the most significant threat to the kingdom. Unlike his older brother, Daemon was an erratic and reckless man despite his immense wit. He was also the only individual who was both liked and despised simultaneously. To some, he was a hero, while to others, he was the darkest of villains. But King Viserys loved Daemon to death, at least initially, and that's why Daemon was a member of his brother Viserys' small council. Viserys still admired his brother, but Daemon's behavior was so erratic and wild that he hesitated to officially announce him as the heir to the throne. King Viserys had named him the commander of the City Watch after taking counsel from Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, a man well known for his wisdom, but an arrogant man nonetheless. Otto was always outspoken about his distaste for Daemon Targaryen and believed him to be the greatest threat to the realm. Although the books claimed that Otto Hightower was a cautious and methodical man who was always loyal to the King Viserys, he was replaced by Sir Criston Cole as Hand of the King, because King Aegon II thought of Otto as a lazy man who did not understand the realm. Nevertheless, to celebrate the new birth of the heir, Viserys threw a huge tournament which was attended by several knights from all over the 7 kingdoms.
But tragedy had claimed both his sons, leaving his succession in doubt.
One man who shone among these was Criston Cole, who defeated Daemon Targaryen, the prince of the city, but we'll come to Cole in just a little bit. On the day of the tournament, Queen Aemma went into labor, but unfortunately, and most expectedly, the birth was not going to be easy. The master called for the king, who was given an impossible choice by the master. Viserys had to either choose one or else he'd save none. The king made the impossible choice and asked the master to save the infant child. As cesarean and other such birthing techniques were not yet available back in the day, the masters cut open Queen Aemma's belly to extract the child, an act that ultimately killed the queen. And unfortunately for Viserys, his newborn son died after not long. Now once again without an heir, Viserys had lost his wife as well. On the same night as they were cremated by the dragon's fire of Rhaenyra's dragon, Daemon Targaryen went to celebrate with the members of the City Watch, where he addressed the dead prince as heir for a day. When the news of this came to King Viserys, he was left angered in his bones and ordered Daemon to leave the city at once and join his wife. Daemon knew better than making a claim for the throne at that moment and left the throne room. But this brought about an imminent want for the heir. King Viserys had lost his newborn son and his brother, so who would rule the 7 kingdoms after Viserys was gone? Well, the king named his eldest child, Rhaenyra, the Princess of Dragonstone, and heir to the throne. And yet, Viserys' tryst with an heir did not come to an end. Not yet, at least.
It's all
A new heir, Your Grace.
Prelude to the Dance of Dragons. Princess Rhaenyra, known as Realm's Delight, appreciated the freedom of being the king's adored daughter, but she was aware that her father had always desired a son and heir, which pained her. But now Rhaenyra had been named heir to the throne. She thought her tensions had sunk into the narrow sea. She couldn't be more wrong, though. On one hand, she had to contend with her uncle Daemon, whom she later married, and on the other hand, she had to face a troubling situation with Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King. Despite their competing ambitions, she was a good friend with Alicent. The Hand's daughter proved to be of immense trouble later for Rhaenyra, because she would later marry Viserys and gave him a daughter and 3 sons, one of whom, Aegon II, would become the reason behind what is called the Dance of the Dragons, also called the Dying of the Dragons. It was a full-fledged civil war amongst the members of the Targaryen family who wanted the throne for themselves. Alicent has a huge part in provoking the civil war and would be seen pushing her son to pursue the throne, even as Rhaenyra has been named heir. On the other hand, there are several other factions that want the throne for themselves, including people like Corlys Velaryon, also known as the Sea Snake and Lord of the Tides, who was the leader of the House of Velaryon. Corlys was the man who married Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, commonly known as the Queen Who Never Was, the heir to the throne before she lost the throne to King Viserys. With Rhaenys, Corlys had 2 children, Laena, who married Daemon Targaryen, and Laenor, who married Rhaenyra Targaryen. This match would later prove of great significance to Rhaenyra because it ensured that Corlys was no more of a threat and also gave her all the houses that pledged their swords to the House Velaryon. In the books, Corlys joins Rhaenyra's court as her Hand of the Queen, which is a huge advantage for Rhaenyra, because he is one of the wisest commanders in the Westeros. Although Rhaenyra was married to Laenor Velaryon, it was a marriage of convenience, and Sir Criston Cole felt strongly for Rhaenyra. Criston would be having a huge role in the House of the Dragon as he would turn out to become a kingmaker.
I am to inherit the Iron Throne. She will block my way.
Other players in House of the Dragon. Game of Thrones had several players fighting for the Iron Throne. I mean, there was something called the War of the Five Kings to begin with, and then Daenerys Targaryen came to challenge Queen Cersei for the throne. While that's not the case with House of the Dragon, there are still a few other players, such as Triarchy, which is essentially an alliance between the free cities of Tyrosh, Lys, and Myr, which had survived the Doom of Valyria. We often hear of the Doom of Valyria, but not many know what it actually was. Well, the Valyrian freehold had survived through 5,000 years and is one of the greatest civilizations ever. Their magic, steel, customs, everything was considered superior, and they were the first to train dragons. However, a cataclysm even destroyed Valyria. The mountains became volcanic and filled the sky with ash and fire, an event so potent that it killed even dragons. But in 114 BC, Daenys, a maiden princess, had foreseen the doom of Valyria in a dream and convinced her father to leave. So, King Aenar managed to flee to the island of Dragonstone off the coast of Westeros. This was the place where Stannis Baratheon and Daenerys Targaryen had set up camps. Nevertheless, the Triarchy was led by Craghas Drar from Myr. We get to know about the Triarchy in one of the small council meetings of King Viserys, who seems rather indifferent towards the threat. However, at the end of the first episode, when King Viserys tells Rhaenyra Targaryen about being named the heir to the throne, Viserys reveals one more secret to Rhaenyra, a secret that only is carried from ruler to heir. Just as Daenys had foreseen the doom of Valyria, Aegon I had seen the doom of men in a dream. This doom was, to begin with, an unimaginably terrible winter that would rise from the distant north. Yes, the same one from Game of Thrones. According to Viserys, Aegon saw absolute darkness riding those cold wintry winds. Clearly, he was talking about the Night King, the White Walkers, and the Whites. So the rich lands were not the only reason why Aegon flew on the dragon back to Westeros. It was this threat to humanity that he wanted to fight. And according to Viserys, only a Targaryen leading the men would have been able to defeat the darkness. If we compare this to Game of Thrones, Viserys' belief did not come rather true because it was under the leadership of Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen that the army of the dead was defeated, and both of them were Targaryens. Although it is unlikely that we'll see much of the undead and White Walkers in the House of the Dragon, one should never say never. So that was the brief history of the family tree of the great House Targaryen, which now lives on with Jon Snow, the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, and Lyanna Stark. We do not know what role the Starks will play in House of the Dragon, but we are definitely excited about the confirmed Jon Snow spin-off series, which is set after the events of Game of Thrones. And as for House of the Dragon, this is going to be a lot of action, adventure, and drama in the next times to come. Let's brace ourselves and hope that the Dance of the Dragons is every bit as exciting in the show as it is in the books. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. In the meantime, have a good one and be safe, and thank you everybody.
14 succession claims were heard, but only 2 were truly considered.